Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here and the artists and musicians that I talk to and visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Monte A. Melnick is an American bassist and longtime tour manager for the Ramones. Mr. Melnick started his career in the country prog rock band 30 Days Out in New York in 1971. The band's lineup featured singer, guitarist John Micallef, guitarist Jack Malken, Monte on bass, and drummer Phil Lowe. Signing to Reprise Records, the unit released a self-titled album in 1971. Sales were sufficient to issue a follow-up. In 1972, the sophomore effort, Miracle Lick, would appear. However, the second album didn't do well in reviews or sales, and the band called it a day in 1973. Afterwards, Monte would become tour manager, plus much more, for the Ramones. For over 22 years, from 1974 to 1996, my guest was there for the entire career of the band. And in 2003 came the book On the Road with the Ramones, written by Monte A. Melnick and Frank Meyer. Well, welcome, Monte.
Hey ho, let's go.
Okay, let's go. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Queens, New York.
Okay. Do you recall your early childhood growing up there?
Well, it was a middle class neighborhood, apartment houses, and it was good middle class neighborhood, and grew up in Forest Hills. It was a very nice neighborhood there.
Okay. Was there music in the household early on?
Yeah, my father liked to play a lot of Harry Belafonte and
Okay.
Gilbert and Sullivan and records like that. I heard a bunch of those things in the house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so some of that's a calypso. Yeah, yeah. Well,
and I got my sister's like a little older than I am, 9 years older than me, but so she had some rock records. I remember Purple People Eater was one of the first
yeah.
songs, and Eeny Teeny Weeny Itsy Bitty Teeny Weeny Bikini, that song too. I remember that vaguely in my youth, So I got
Yeah.
the bit of rock and roll there for my sister,
Yeah, who was that? Who was that? Brian, what was his name? That did that.
Brian Highland, I think.
Yes, Highland.
Purple
You're right.
People Eater, yeah. And the other was C Booty or C Boogie was
Okay.
Purple People Eater or something like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, that's good that you had a older sibling, to kind of pass down their records or, influence you and your listening. Well, were either one of your parents musically inclined?
No, not really.
Not really, not really. All right. What was the first musical instrument that you learned to play?
I had a couple of piano lessons when I was younger. Very, very sporadic,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of those are, kind of a little too structured sometimes. And people want to kind of do their own thing after they learn the basics and not stick to those lessons. Well, can you remember one of the first 45s or albums that you got yourself?
Well, I grew up with the Fillmore East here.
Okay, yeah.
Which was a terrific venue. There was so many bands coming through the area at the time, so I got to see, Sam and Dave and the Who and Mothers of Invention and et cetera, Jimi Hendrix. So I grew up listening to a lot of rock and roll music when I was younger.
Yeah.
I think the first Beatles was the first album. I think I got one of the Beatles albums.
Okay, yeah.
And Cream, I remember the Cream album.
Yeah. Yeah, I just spoke to Richard Ray Harris. You may not know that name. He was in the Freedom Highway. He was out in San Francisco. But he talked about Bill Graham and how influential he was in promoting their band and helping them get a start, get a leg up as well. Well, how about one of the first concerts that you attended? that you can recall?
I used to go out to the island place called the Action House. I
Mhm.
think Sam and Dave I saw.
Okay.
The Vagrants. The Vagrants grew up in Forest Hills. They were from Forest Hills with
Yeah.
Leslie West in the band.
Yes,
I
yes,
saw
yeah,
them out there. Was highly influenced by that.
yes, yes. Yeah. Are any of the members still around? I know Leslie passed away. Uh, I don't know. I would like to.
Felix Pepper. Oh, the original? I'm not
Yeah.
sure of his brother, Larry West.
Okay. Like, I'd really like to talk to one of those guys. Yeah. Well, what were some other early musical influences for you?
Well, when I lived in Forest Hills, lived like near the Forest Hills High School, and I used to drive my bike around the high school, and I bumped into one day Tommy Erdely, which is Tommy Ramone. We
Yeah.
realized we're going to the same junior high school together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got very good friends with him. I was in the chorus with him in junior high school. And when we went to high school together, and he got me into music. He said, "Why don't you pick up the bass and play the bass?" So I got into the music through Tommy Ramone, actually, Thomas Erdely at the time. I was
Yeah.
in groups before 30 Days Out with Tom.
Okay. That was my question. Next question.
1968, I had a band with him as a trio called Triad,
Okay.
like
Okay.
kind of like Cream and Jimi Hendrix.
Okay.
I went to the 30 Days Out, and then after 30 Days Out, I was in a band, glam rock, was switching over from glam rock to punk rock. I was in a band with Tommy and Jess Sandlin. He was in Tough Darts. We
Tough
had
time.
a band called Butch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I transited.
Yeah. That's
Tommy
a
got me into music. Before that, I was actually in Forest Hills High School. I was more into sports. I
okay.
was on the
Okay.
golf team in Forest Hills High School and stuff like that. But Tommy said, "Why don't you pick up a bass?" And I picked it up pretty fast.
Oh, okay. Do you still golf?
No, not
Okay.
lately.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when I was in college, as just an elective, I took golf. I remember that, and I wasn't really interested. It was just a way to kind of, get a blow off course. The way I saw
I actually
it.
I got my letter in golf.
Oh, did you?
People say,
Okay.
"Hey, what are you in the basketball team,
Yeah.
baseball?" No, it's got it from golf.
Okay.
Where do you live? Where are you located?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
About 20, 25 miles northeast of Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, down here. Yeah, most people think I'm around Austin because that's more of a music city. But no, about 3.5 hours from there, north of that. But yeah, just a little suburb, Wiley, which I know you've never heard of. It was a sleepy town. It's growing now, but back in the day they used to call it Wide Awake Wiley because of the sleepiness, here and being country. Uh, well, how were you asked to join 30 Days Out?
Uh, Tommy was working in recording studios at the time. He wanted to be an engineer, so he was the assistant engineer. He knew this guy, Jack Malken, who had a recording studio, and Jack was putting together a band, and he brought Tommy and I into. Tommy was almost in 30 Days Out, but they didn't need another guitar player, so he didn't join the group.
Okay.
But it was through Jack Malkin who had a recording studio. He was working at a recording studio and had some time, and he was putting together a band.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys opened for the Beach Boys. That's one of the bands.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah,
I was up in the Bronx,
in the
over
Bronx.
the Armory up there. They played.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's an odd pairing. That's for sure. Yeah, I know I've heard doing these interviews, of really strange pairings like that. Really heavy group, and then real pop, harmony band, and it's like some of the people were just booing the opening band. They couldn't wait for the
Well,
big pop.
30 Days Out was a lot of country rock, so
Yeah,
it wasn't so that
yeah.
off the Beach Boys.
Right, right, right. You did have that influence there. Well, what other bands and artists did you recall opening for?
Quicksilver Messenger Service,
Ah,
Tom Rush.
okay. Oh yeah, Tom Rush is one of my favorite folkies. Yeah, just love his. What is the one song? The Child Song. Are you familiar with that one?
Not that
Just a
familiar.
beautiful song. Uh, yeah. Well, do you recall recording sessions for the first album?
Yeah, it was great. They brought us out to California, and we were recording in A&M Studios.
Okay.
And I think Steve Miller was there at the time.
Oh, was he?
We
Okay.
bumped into him.
Okay.
It was great going out to California. They put us up at a nice house. We had a house up in the hills there. I think we overlooked like the where the Sharon Tate murder happened. You
Yeah,
could see
yeah,
across the valley. So we were in, I think we were in one of the houses that maybe the Beatles might have stayed in at the time when they came to, you know.
yes. Isn't that something? I just saw that. I know it's an older documentary, but on the Manson murders, and then I just watched that recently. Yeah, very very eerie time. Well, the self-titled album was released in '71 on Reprise. We'll go with that, and it was unique for its packaging.
Yeah, it had the poster on it, poster
Yeah,
of the of a ship, which is unusual. You could take the poster off, put it up on your wall, which is nice at the time.
yeah. Whose idea was that? Was that the label or?
Yeah, I think the label came up with that.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that is very unique. And
You
you
know,
got
that they were trying to 30 days out is a nautical term. You know what it means?
no, I know it's nautical, but what is it? What does it mean?
Well, it's in the sailing ships when you went from across the Atlantic, when you were 30 days out, you were halfway. You were past the point of no return.
No
You know, you couldn't
return.
go back. You had to go keep on going forward at that time, 30 days out.
Okay. Well, who coined that? Who came up with that?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay. All right.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. We're going back a ways. Well, this one, yeah, the first album is in more of a country rock vein. Uh, I like the album closer, Doing the Best I Can, especially the first and last sections, the funky and the keyboards. Is that Jim Dickinson or was that Larry
Yeah.
Mitchell? Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I think you got me on that. I think it's Dickinson.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I like the keyboards in that one. Yeah, yeah. And the album did fairly well, right?
Yeah, did enough to, we got the second album to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, the second album did come out the following year, again on Reprise, Miracle Lick. And this one's a little more progressive and straight up rock. Yeah,
Yeah, a little more rock and roll and country rock. Yeah.
yeah. I tend to like the songs on the second one over the first.
Okay.
Myself. I'm surprised it didn't fare as well as the first one.
Well,
Uh,
management, record companies, you're dealing with a lot of different people there. So,
yeah, it's not all in your control. It's not. Yeah, exactly. I think the sun keeps right on shining, and everybody's got to have a song or really better than anything I heard on the first album. Just days. Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad you liked it.
I really like those. The feel of those tracks. Was uh, was it the band's choice to break up or pressure from the label?
It was the band's choice, basically. Things weren't working out, and we were up in Massachusetts in one big house together. And when we separated to different houses up in Massachusetts, so it was getting a little hard to keep it together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you did mention earlier Tommy. So you grew up with these guys.
Yeah, I grew up with Tommy, and all the Ramones went to Forest Hills High School. Actually, in 1966, I remember the talent show in Forest Hills High School. A band called Tangerine Puppets played, and that was Tommy was on guitar and Johnny was on bass, and they played. I remember seeing them in a talent show back in 1966. Just
Wow.
those two. Of
Yeah,
course, Johnny went to guitar, and
yeah,
Tommy went to drums. So,
yeah. I imagine they looked a whole lot different back then.
oh yeah, everybody did at that time. I think there's pictures of our yearbook back then. You can see what
Oh,
we looked like.
oh yeah, yeah, that's fun. Well, were you Tommy the one that you were probably the closest to growing up?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, all right.
And in the beginning, in early years.
In the early years, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I
where
grew up with him, junior high school, and he got me into music. Played in two bands with him, and then we got together with Performance Studios,
okay,
which was where the Ramones started off, basically.
right. Well, we'll
Well, he
talk.
brought the Ramones into the studio.
We'll talk about that for viewers that don't know where the name the Ramones came from.
Uh, Dee Dee was looking at the paper, an article one day, and saw that Paul McCartney checked himself into hotels as Paul Ramone.
Oh, okay.
So he came up, let's call ourselves Ramones. They decided to actually keep the last name Ramone, and each of them. So Joey had his Jeffrey Hyman. He had to change his name. Jeffrey didn't. Jeffrey Ramone. Joey sounded better. Dee Dee was okay. Johnny was okay. Tommy's okay.
Yeah,
That rhymed,
that's interesting.
So there's a Beatles connection here,
Oh, it's okay. Well, go ahead.
And Jim McCartney, well, that's because of McCartney was checked into hotels under Paul Ramone. So that's how the Ramones got the name. And he gets goofed about that every once in a while, that some people call Paul McCartney, hey, you're a Ramone, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he knows about it,
Yeah, okay. Okay. He knows that whole history. Well, what I was going to ask you too, what were the circumstances that led to you becoming the band's tour manager?
Well,
How'd you work into that?
as I said, I had a couple of groups with Tommy, and then I had to run with 30 Days Out, and then another group with Tommy. And then after that broke up, my cousin Ivan was installing locks in a loft on 20th Street in New York City. And a woman said she was looking for somebody to come and help her build a rehearsal studio and recording studio. So I brought Tommy into the project. We designed the place and helped build the place. Then we got to manage the place. We got managing, and then we got free time for our own projects. At that time, I had another group I was working with, and Tommy was just brought the Ramones in as a three-piece group. He just wanted to manage them and produce them in the studio. So he brought them into performance studios. So that's where I first saw the Ramones as a three-piece group, actually. It was Joey was on drums, Dee Dee on guitar, Dee Dee on bass, and singing, and Johnny on guitar. And Dee Dee was having a hard time singing and playing bass, so Tommy pulled Joey off the drums, and they started looking for drummers. Nobody could understand what they were doing at the time. It was so raw, and
Yeah.
and it was like, I don't know if you saw any early Ramones shows and CBGBs. They were just very raw.
Yeah.
So they couldn't find drummers. So Tommy was a great musician. He was a guitar player, basically. So he would sit down on the drums and try to show drummers what to play,
Yeah.
And nobody drummers couldn't understand. So he decided he should join the group. So he joined the group. So they started doing showcases in the studio there. And I started running sound for them at the time. That's how I got involved with the Ramones. Running
Okay.
sound, actually, as a sound man first for the Ramones.
Okay. Yeah, another one I thought about, one mention I thought about it a few minutes ago with the Ramones, none of the members actually had the last name. The Walker brothers is another one. None of them had, their last name was really Walker. So if you don't know any better, you just assume that's their real name.
I wonder where they got their name from.
Yeah, exactly. That's another. I would like to. I think there's one left. I think. Yeah. There's just the one left. Two of them have passed away. Well.
Well, talk about the name though. That was a
Yeah.
problem in the beginning of the Ramones, basically, because
Sure.
people thought there was some sort of like Spanish group or something.
Oh,
Ramones or something.
oh,
They
okay.
thought they were all brothers also,
Yeah, yeah.
Which
I
is,
would think Italian. I would think Italian.
yeah. Well, actually more Spanish, because
Okay.
originally when Danny Fields was asked to see the Ramones, he was the first manager with Linda Stein. Somebody said, "Why don't you go see the Ramones?" He said, "I don't want to see like a cha-cha Spanish group. Forget it, Ramones." No. They eventually saw the group and fell in love with them, became the manager. But then we got, people in the early years, that's what they thought it was.
Yeah.
Also, the brothers, they thought they were brothers.
That's right. That's right. I did. I mean, early on when I first heard about them, I assumed that they were, until I found out otherwise. Well, tell us, what did the job as tour manager entail?
Well, I worked my way up. I started, as I said, working as doing the sound for them.
Okay.
When the studio had to close down, they started getting jobs all over the place. So I worked with them at CBGBs, and then they started getting jobs over like Boston around. And then I started to join the crew, which I worked my way up. And in the early years, I was doing everything, driving and setting up equipment and doing the sound. the bigger they got, the more people we could hire. We could hire like guitar roadies and drum roadies and sound men and monitor men, over the years. We're talking about 20 something years here. So
Yes.
I worked my way up. I worked like tour road manager, sound man, road manager, tour manager. So eventually tour managers, a lot of different things that you have to deal with as being a tour manager. You not only have to deal with a crazy band, but a crazy crew on top of that. So you have to think about nutty people running, and then the record companies, the promoters, the press. You're dealing with all these people, the booking agents. So there's a lot of things going on being a tour manager or a road manager that you have to entail. Get
well, how is it similar at all to being the band's manager?
No, it's different because you're on the road with the band, basically.
Okay.
The managers usually don't go on the road with the band,
Okay. Did the Ramones have an actual manager?
Yeah, well, they started, they have always had, they started off with Danny Fields and Linda Stein.
Okay.
Linda Stein was married to Seymour Stein of Sire Records. That's how they,
right.
And then they brought Seymour in and he loved the group and signed Sire Records.
Okay. Right.
And then after that, after a couple of years, they moved over to Gary Kerfus, who was a big manager in Blondie, Talking Heads, and B-52s. He managed a lot of people. So he was the last manager of the Ramones.
Okay. I went through a few of them. Well, you were there for all of their over 22,200 shows, 2,200
Yeah,
shows.
I was there for about 2020. I missed a few in the beginning, but
okay.
I was there for most of it. You go to the back of my book, I list all the shows in there,
Yeah, and you still have your hearing, huh?
What? I use that joke a lot.
Oh, it was a joke. Okay. Yeah. Well, wow, that's a lot of shows.
In the beginning, I was out there in front doing the sound. So later on, I got a sound man, and I was a tour manager, so I didn't have to be out really in front of it. I checked it out. But when they went on, I would go back and try to settle up and work with the promoters, and so I wasn't in front of the full blast all the time.
Right. Well, I've heard some early Ramones shows, the audiences didn't particularly warm up to the band.
There was a problem, basically, finding a good booking agent that understood what the Ramones were about. In the early years, they decided to stick them on some big bills with big groups. Like there was one time we played at a Toronto Canadian festival with Aerosmith and Ted Nugent. This was like 77. And nobody knew what the Ramones were like. So when the Ramones went on early, the crowd, they were throwing like food on stage, stuff like that. Okay. And there's a famous shot of the Ramones giving the finger to like 20,000, 30,000 people when they walked off because they were pissed off. But then these booking agents decided to stick them early years in front of like Black Sabbath.
Yeah. Oh, that's another one.
And that crowd didn't tolerate the Ramones early. Now the Black Sabbath people like the Ramones, but back then, 78, you go on, open up, that they were throwing like hard like batteries and
hard
ice pick came up on stage and
really
coins. It was dangerous, it was dangerous. The crowd didn't want anything to do with them in the early years,
Wow. Yeah.
And then one time we opened up for Toto, which is very strange. But the good thing about that is by the time the audience woke up, we were off stage. So it was a sleepy type of thing. That was in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So but then the booking agents finally realized that we really couldn't really open up for these huge acts. It was better for we headline smaller places.
Right, exactly.
Eventually, later on, we got onto festivals when the albums were out and people understood what the Ramones, and we had a big following, so it was better later on. But the early years, it was rough on some of those shows,
Yeah.
We played up in Washington State there in a lumberjack bar, which they had the chicken wire over the
chicken wire
in front of, so they couldn't throw stuff. That audience didn't understand the Ramones either.
No, I guess they wouldn't.
Because the Ramones played so fast and short set.
Yeah, right.
At that show, they played like 30 songs, but it was like less than half an hour. Right. So they came off, and the venue guy, the club owner said, "That's not enough. Get back on stage." They went back out and played the same set over again.
Did
At,
they?
at that time, then nobody knew the difference, so.
Right. Exactly. And I'm sure that the audience was maybe a little bit inebriated.
Yeah, well,
And
they had a chicken wire thing, so that was the type of club that was.
exactly. The beer bottles wouldn't get through.
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, also early on, not a lot of radio airplay here in the States.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. In the States, the radio stations here just wouldn't play them. I think they got it affected because of the Sex Pistols.
Okay.
When the Sex Pistols came around, they were doing stupid things at radio stations and throwing up, and they had the whole anarchy. And so all these radio stations said, "Oh, Ramones, punk rock, we don't want these guys. They thought that we were a gang or something, They were, the Ramones a gang with the leather jackets. So the U.S. radio we couldn't get played. It was horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. When did that start to change for the better?
Well, later on, it took a while when they finally got playing bigger venues, but they never really got enough radio play in early years. I think what happened was after the Ramones retired, in '96, all these kids that were listening to the Ramones, that were Ramones fans, finally got into positions where they could put them on. They became DJs, and they put them on radios, put them on movie soundtracks and commercials, because they were kids at the time, and then finally they grew up and they realized the Ramones songs were great, and the Ramones started getting more on the radio, and then sound checks and movie soundtracks and commercials and stuff like that they couldn't get when they were around.
Yeah.
Before they retire. It's a shame.
And
Now
that's
it's ridiculous. People say the Stones, Beatles, Ramones in one sentence.
yeah. Well,
Amazing.
weren't they popular? What, in South America, was it?
Oh yeah, huge down there because they got a lot of radio play down there, and the
Okay.
kids also really related to the Ramones down there, and they still do. Marky's down there now playing Marky Ramones. There's still a couple of Ramones, not the four originals are dead, unfortunately,
Right.
but Marky's out there playing like 98% Ramones stuff, and
Right.
people South America is one of the biggest places because the kids really picked up, the radio station picked up on them, and they played big venues down there. They played soccer stadium and stuff like that, and multiple big, club venues and stuff.
Yeah. I find it fascinating how a band can be popular in other countries, and not at home, not in their own country.
Eventually, the Ramones got into
Yeah.
some big festivals all over the world and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but they're for some reason, South America, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Uruguay,
Yeah.
one of my favorite cities, Montevideo.
Yeah.
Montevideo. The kids there, and they really loved the Ramones and picked up on what the Ramones were talking about, basically,
Right. And I'm sure they like the energy of the band too. That
Oh
was
yeah, the energy was great.
Yeah. Well, highlight some of the albums that you were particularly fond of, and maybe your memories surrounding the albums.
Well, the Phil Spector album, working with him was a trip and a half.
Oh, I bet it was.
Oh my God. He liked the band originally in '77. He came back and saw the band at the Whiskey and came backstage with his bodyguards. There's a picture of him in my book of he's had a cape and looked like a devil came back then,
Yeah.
He loved the group back then. He wanted to work with them. Finally, Seymour got him to work with the band. But we didn't realize, they all idolized him. He was one of the greatest producers, but working with him, we didn't realize how nutty he was at the time,
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
He was like similar to Joe Meek. You familiar with him from the UK?
I'm not too familiar. No.
Yeah, he was like
There's a picture of him
yeah.
back in the Whiskey.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
See how crazy he looks there?
He does. He does.
So, he would do crazy things at the studio. He first of all wouldn't let anybody in, basically, into this controlled area. Like Alan Arkish was producing, we were working with Alan on Rock and Roll High School, and he came back to visit the group, and he wouldn't let him in, kicked them out of the studio, did all sorts of crazy things. one time he come in like dressed with a like a John Lennon hat and a regular polo shirt, and then he would go in and out of the bathroom. And he came out of the bathroom looking like that picture. He put on a cape. He changed his whole look in the middle of the session, you know?
Uh-huh. There was definitely a method to his madness, though.
Yeah, and then we went up to his house a couple of times, and to get in and out of his house, you had a key to get in and a key to get out. So he kept us up there a few times. He wouldn't let us out of the house up there. We had
Yeah.
to watch like crazy horror movies, and he played a song over and over again. And I think Ronnie Spector had a similar problem there with the house getting in and out, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and
He was
then
a beautiful person. I worked with Ronnie Spector a bit after the Ramones. He was a beautiful person.
yeah, and then Phil later on his demise with the lady he wouldn't let out of his house.
Yeah, and he had guns on him. He told him to put a gun on the console, but he never pulled a gun and pointed at us. But there was a couple of times we wanted to leave, and he was yelling at me, "Give me the keys." I was driving a van for the Ramones. He was just yelling, "Give me the keys to the van. You're not going." And well, we
Yeah,
got out of there, but it was a studio, you know. So
right,
it was like touchy. He was like yelling and screaming at times, but the album came out. You know, I think it was okay.
yeah, yeah,
But people ask me what's your favorite Ramones song?
uh-huh,
I happen to have a favorite Ramones song. I like a lot of Ramones songs, but
yeah,
there was one on that album. You have any idea if you moved that album, the End
yeah.
of the Century album?
Yes, I don't have the actual album. I have like a greatest hits.
So there was one song, it's my favorite song, it's All the Way.
Okay.
Why?
Okay.
You know why? Because Joey wrote me into the song. Monte,
Uh,
crazy. It's like being in the Navy. So
yeah.
he wrote me into a Ramones song. So that has to be my favorite Ramones song.
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. I think Rockaway Beach. I mean, I know that was one of their real popular ones, but I like that. And Sheena,
Blitzkrieg Bop, of course, you know.
yeah, and yeah, Blitzkrieg Bob. Sheena's a
Yeah,
punk rocker.
you
There's
know, with Blitzkrieg Bach, the Hey Ho, let's go. That's
yeah,
on jock rock albums. You go to a sporting event, any
uh,
sporting event, and they're going, Hey Ho, let's go.
yeah,
Part of
yes,
the chant. It's on jock rock albums now. So the
right.
Ramones got on that, you know. The people, you know, and in the back of mind, there's the Ramones there too, you know,
That's right. That's
which
right.
is great.
They they really were behind that, the genesis behind that as well. Well, I'm sure the band members just all got along all the time, right?
Well, in the early years, they got along, you know, they were friends in the early years, but you know, later on, there's what happened with you know, females. And so that's happens in a lot of different bands, you know, with the different people take, you know, with the girlfriends and stuff like that. So, but they, you know, Joey and Johnny stuck together because they realized the music was more important and going on stage is more important. Do you play an instrument?
No, I don't.
Well, me being what it was like on stage, you go on stage and the audience is feeding back, you're getting high, you know,
Yeah,
it's a great feeling. And the Ramones had that. They would write the songs, they would produce, you know, would go out and 30,000 people would, there's a feedback there, you know. That's why a lot of groups, when they come
yeah,
off stage, they want to keep that high
yeah,
going and they go to keep on with drugs or alcohol, you know.
right, right.
So Johnny and Joey realized that over the years, you know, they didn't socialize as friends. They were friends in the beginning because they grew
Mm,
up together in Forest Hills. But later on with the what happened with the girlfriend there with Linda, they decided just not to socialize, but just keep the group together, you know,
yeah.
keep on with the songs and go playing around the world. And the fans were out there, so they kept that going. I mean, how many marriages last over 22
I
years?
was I was going to say, right, exactly. And a band is a family. I mean, it becomes a family. You're with each other so much.
Well, yeah, they spent a lot of time, you know, says if you look in the cover of my book, you know, there's they're in the bus. We're in the
Yes, yes.
and we did a lot of tour vans. We had a buses a couple of times, but they realized the buses were very expensive. They
Right.
didn't like sleeping on the bus and stuff like that.
Oh, no, no.
So we developed kind of like a thing where we would do sections of the country. We'd have the van driven out to California. The crew would go out. They had trucks and RVs and stuff for the crew. Sometimes they were in buses too. So we would fly out there and then do a couple of weeks up and down the coast, come back to New York, and then do the Midwest for a couple of weeks, come back. So we would do it in a van because they liked staying at the hotels. It was
Yeah.
easier for them
Yeah.
at that time.
Right.
So that's how we developed that. But we had a couple of buses in the beginning, but there's a couple of pictures of buses in the book there, if you could see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, going back to the playing live, like you said, it's just that energy and that instant connection you're making with the audience, where with the records, it's not like that, I mean, the recording, did most of the members, did they prefer playing live over recording?
Well, playing live was their meat and potatoes. So they had to go out on the road and play live to sustain
Yeah.
their living, They like recording, basically. I mean, no, Johnny didn't like recording.
Okay. Okay.
He's like in and out. Joey liked recording a lot. And the other
Okay.
guys liked it,
Yeah. Yeah.
But Johnny was quick. He didn't like really he just wanted to do everything fast, quick and fast.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think there is a difference there. Yeah. Between the two of those. Well, talk about joining Premier Talent and what a difference the booking agency made.
Well, as I said, a good agents realized where the Ramones could play and who, on festivals, okay, but not open up for some crazy group that really weren't compatible with. And they
Yeah.
were a powerhouse.
Yeah.
So, which is good for me, going into a club knowing, you got to take care of us. You better take care of the rider and don't mess around with what I'm, because I would pre-advance all the shows with each club or venue or they realized they didn't want to mess around because they wouldn't get other acts into the places that they were, venues. They didn't want to mess around because we were part of Premier Talent, which is a big agency, had a lot of groups. So that was very good having a good booking agent like that. Tim McGrath was one of our agents. I want to give him a shout out.
Okay. Okay.
Barbara
Good.
Skydell and the Skydells and Frank Barcelona. They were great people.
Okay. All right. It's always good to give a shout out like that. Uh, well, after the Ramones broke up, you continued to work with Marky.
Yeah, Marky was at the time when they were thinking about retiring. He's getting his own little thing together, and he asked me to come and manage him. Actually, so I was actually Marky's first manager, which is different than being a tour manager. I got a good tour manager, Roran Cohen, a good great guy. I had him go out on the road, but it's a whole different thing being a manager and a tour manager. It's a whole different kettle of tea there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got him his first record contract, put him out on the road. The only problem with that was that they, coming from the Ramones, were, up here getting, big venues, getting a lot of money, staying at great hotels because they had the money. But I had to send Marky out on the road. I couldn't get as much money for him as the Ramones were getting. So it was a little bit of a problem. So he had to he didn't like his going back down, working in smaller clubs and not as good best venues. The hotels were, top rate and all that. So that was a little bit of a tension there,
Right.
I
Right.
worked with him for about a year and a half, and then we have an amicable split.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was with also George DuBose, who shot a lot of the Ramones record covers.
Oh, okay.
He was co-managing with. We had a management company at the time, so he was George and myself were managing Marky.
Oh, okay. The two of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you gotta, I mean, I know it's hard. It would be hard, being like you set up at that level with the Ramones and then, kind of a solo,
Yeah.
but you got to understand it's just one member now, not a full band. So you're not going to, be demanding that kind of money that you
But
did.
but
Yeah.
now, I mean, Marky's
Yeah.
continuing the Ramones legacy, so
Right.
doing really well out
Yeah.
there. He has a serious radio program also. CJ was out there for a while, doing his own thing, his own albums. He's now with the Gimme Gimmes, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. You familiar with that?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
He's
Yes.
into that group now. He put some great albums out, solo albums. And Richie had a couple of solo albums of his own. Richie's doing some acting. So there's still a couple of Ramones floating out there, but not the original four, which is
Right.
because if they can see how big they are, I
Yeah.
really wish they could see the original four,
Right. Right. Well, it is good that he's carrying on that legacy, like you said, for younger people, younger fans. Well, On the Road with the Ramones, was that the original title?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, then it never changed the title. Okay,
Now we can,
okay,
if you look at the cover of the book there, You see, I'm in a van there. So I kind of had to figure out a way of what to put on the cover of the book, because I worked with over 20 some years, 8 different Ramones. There was only 4 at a time in the group, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what to put on the cover, basically. I came up with the idea, me in the van with all 8 Ramones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the cover basically is John Holmstrom from Punk Magazine.
Uh-huh.
He did the cover for me. We're
Yeah.
driving out of CBGB's there, and there's a pinhead.
Uh,
Things are flying off the roof
I
there.
was
The
going to say all the
U.
instruments are
But John Holmstrom did the cover for me, Punk Magazine. Great illustration.
okay.
And there's a little sign on the bottom there. It says 2,263 miles to go. That's how many shows they played over their career.
Well, there you go. Okay. Yeah, you got
I
me there.
list them all in the back of the book, by the way. If you pick up the book and you're wondering, 1980, what I saw the Ramones somewhere, where was it? And you can look up in my book. I list all the shows.
Okay. Wow. All those, yeah, man, that's a lot of memories there, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, how and when did you become AV supervisor at the New York Hall of Science?
Well, after Ramones split up, I said I worked with Marky a little bit. I worked with a couple other groups, Degeneration, Jesse Malin's group, and worked a little bit with Ronnie Spector, a little bit. And then, I lived near the Flushing Meadow Park where the Hall of Science was. And I walked over there one day and I asked them, you looking for anybody? They said, no, we're not really hiring anybody, but if you want to volunteer. So I volunteered over there. And it so happens their auditorium was being taken care of by like kids. So they didn't really know what they were doing. It's like a mess up there. So I went into the auditorium and I fixed everything up. I was just volunteer there, and they eventually liked what I did because I knew how to work PA there because it was, and PAs, they had portable PAs to take around, and then they finally hired me.
Okay.
So I kind of worked my way up there
Okay.
because I knew a lot about PAs and working with audiences and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I forgot to ask you, going back to the book, how did you come to work with Frank Meyer?
Well, originally, Joey had a solo album on Sanctuary Records, and a good friend of mine, Kevin Patrick, got him the record deal on Sanctuary Records. And Sanctuary Records at the time had a publishing house, Sanctuary Publishing. So he brought me in to write a book. But I said to them at the time, I'm not a writer, they said, well, bring a ghostwriters in. So they had several people come in. And Frank came in, and he was just such a huge Ramones fan, very talented guy, Street Walking Cheetahs, and right now he's playing with Fear and Big Dick Manitoba. He's a huge Ramones fan. So he did such a great job, I decided to give him co-writing instead of just a ghost, not having him mentioned on the book. So it was a really great job with helping out, going through all the different things we had. I had a whole room full of like memorabilia. The beautiful part about my book is, usually books like text, some pictures in the middle, text. Well, my book's like full of pictures. Like there's over 300 images. So because I had a lot of stuff, posters, tour passes, itineraries, photos. So the publishing company they had a great art director put together the book. So it's like very graphic, which is terrific,
Graphic intensive. Yeah. I prefer that. Like you said, most books, all the pictures are in the middle. I prefer that dispersed throughout the book.
Yeah. If you notice the way the art director put behind text, there's images and colors and stuff throughout the whole book.
Right. And then you can, as you're reading, hopefully, like the pictures are, appropriate to what you're reading. At that time.
I always make a joke that's good for the punk rock audiences. You don't have to know how to read; just look at the pictures.
Right.
Sorry, punk rock audience.
or a wide swath of our of America, 5th grade education. Then just look at the pictures, right?
I was lucky enough to keep all the stuff in the house because I didn't realize when I would, put the stuff in a room that the stuff was really valuable.
Yeah.
Over the years after the Ramones split up, there was a big exhibit in 2016 here in Queens Museum. And I had like 170 of my pieces in the exhibit.
Yeah.
Then went to LA to the Grammy Museum, and it was originally supposed to be a traveling thing like the Bowie exhibit was around the world, but that fell apart. So I had all this memorabilia. Luckily, it was kind of like my retirement fund there. When I had all these auctions off at the.
There you go.
I didn't realize you stick stuff away like a poster or a tour pass or an itinerary.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was really later on when they retired and they became bigger. The stuff was valuable. I had like 14 auctions of the
Wow.
stuff.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I mean, many people are glad that you saved all that material too, and kept that. Yeah. Well, who's the band I'm trying to think of that are very similar? They had the really, really short songs. They did Nights in White Satin, but like a punk version.
Oh, punk? No, I'm not sure. I'm not
You
sure
know what
that.
I'm talking? The
So
Dickies, the Dickies.
the Dickies. Dickies are great. They opened up for us a
Yes.
couple times.
Now
They were good
that
friends of the band.
that's what I was going to say. But yeah,
Stan Lee.
that's kind of similar
Yeah, a
to
little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They were a great group.
yeah,
I
and
think they're
they're
still around.
most of theirs were like real humorous. Yeah, and
Yes, yes, yes. They
that's
were
who I was
great.
trying to think of. Yeah, the Dickies.
Wow.
Well, I see behind you too. You got a couple of gold records.
Yeah,
Oh,
that took 40 years to get that before it went gold. 40 years.
really?
That's how the Ramones were ignored.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's Ramones mania over there.
On that one, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. Yeah. Sometimes it's like that, right? In the industry, you know. It's were they ever inducted into any Hall of Fame?
Yeah, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay. Okay. They were in the actual Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay.
Yeah, Eddie Vedder inducted them.
Okay. When was that? What year?
2001,
Oh,
2002, 2002.
okay. Okay.
But they didn't, Joey had passed away, unfortunately, at the time.
Right. Right.
And they didn't play, usually when band plays, but Green Day came up and played Ramones songs.
Yeah.
Because Green Day were the big fans.
Oh, I
Billy
could
Joe
see that.
Armstrong was a big fan of the Ramones.
I could see that and hear that. Yeah. Well, going back to the book again, how long did you work on it before it was published?
Well, it took about a year, a little less than a year.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's not too bad. That's not too
No, it
bad.
was a pretty quick thing, like the Ramones played fast, fast, fast.
Yeah, you have to put the book
It was
back.
good with Frank. He came out of my house. We went through all the stuff in the room there, picked out a bunch of stuff
Uh-huh.
that we wanted to put in. And luckily, we shipped it to England, all the stuff, and they did it. They did it in England first,
Yeah.
and they got most of it back.
Right.
I got
Yeah.
all of it. And it was great. And then we did a lot of interviews. So it's like a lot of oral history.
Right. Right.
We did a lot of interviews together. I still have some of the tapes from that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you mentioned, Sanctuary. They put out some good CDs and recordings too. Over the years. Well, it was first published in 2003. And how many
Late
editions?
2003, 2004.
Almost 2004. How many editions came afterwards?
Three different updates. The
Okay.
last one is the bonus edition, which is the one where you see with the Ramones red on it. It says bonus edition in the bottom there.
Yes.
I added 40 more pages onto that one. But over the years, when it first came out, the second edition, things happen in the Ramones, They
Yeah.
would get some awards, street signs, then people passed away.
Yeah.
So finally, the last version has most of it. It came out a couple of years ago, actually.
Okay. Okay. Well, can you share a few stories from the book, or do the viewers have to buy a copy to find out?
We're talking about 20 years here.
Yeah.
So many different stories. Talk about opening up for crazy bands. We opened up at Mike Oldfield. That was weird.
Oh yeah.
Tubular Bells. That was in
Yeah.
Spain, Barcelona, on the steps to the palace. It's huge steps to the palace. There's like 100,000 people there. A lot of people there. And so for some reason, we got the bill opening up for him. That was another strange bill. So after we played, just listening to Tubular Bells, that was pretty surrealistic type of thing.
Yeah. Did it come across well live? Tubular Bells?
Yeah, it was big. It was huge at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious because sometimes recordings it's hard to translate that live. something like that. But it did come out well. Okay. Good production. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that would be like one of those situations, I don't know. If you're waiting for Mike, or if you like the Ramones, after you see the Ramones, you're going to leave, probably not stay around for him.
So a few people did leave after
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Well, what else? Maybe some other unique stories that you haven't shared very often that are PG, that are okay to talk about.
It's rock and roll. This is rock and roll, son. You like the movie? That working with the movie is really a nice thing.
Yeah.
Jay Souls, Clint Howard, all those
Right.
people. Alan Arkish, the director.
Right.
A funny thing about it is like, when you're in a movie shoot, it's like you sit around for like an hour and a half, then they film it 10, 15 minutes, then you got to sit around till they set up another scene or something like that. The Ramones were a little antsy. They didn't like hanging around a lot. I didn't mind because I was wandering around talking to people, and they just didn't like hanging around a lot,
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that.
But that was an experience and a half. The funny thing about that is, but they weren't paid a lot for the movie. So in between shooting, we had a week or so off. We had to play venues. That's when we opened up for Black Sabbath in between shooting. So they stuck us on like 4 shows of Black Sabbath at the time, 1978 or whatever. And that's when we had the crazy stuff on stage. They were throwing nutty things on stage because the Black Sabbath fans didn't understand the Ramones at all.
Right. Well, any socializing with Ozzy or any of the other members?
Not in the early years.
Okay.
I was a big fan of Lemmy from Motorhead.
Okay. Yeah.
And he wrote that great song, Ramones. He wrote a song, which is terrific. We work with, he come to the shows in England a lot, became a big fan. And as I said, he wrote that song. And he was actually at the last show the Ramones played in LA. He came up on stage and played that song with CJ and the Ramones,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, those are some nice memories there too. Yeah, it's got to be fascinating too to see the development, from the early years to the late years.
And as I said, the Ramones are kind of like Johnny Appleseed. They would go out in the early years, play all these small clubs and different venues and all around the world, and kids would see them,
Yeah.
They said, hey, look, if they can do that, it's not that difficult. You don't have to be like Eric Clapton or Ginger Baker or something like that. All these kids formed bands.
Yes.
And gave the Ramones credit later on.
Yes.
So when we were in the Lollapalooza tour, 1996, we had Metallica was headlining, Soundgarden, Rancid, and Ramones were down there early on. So I put the Ramones on. All of a sudden, I'm looking at the side of the stage. There's Rancid, Metallica, Soundgarden. They're all big fans of the Ramones. And they came up, they became good friends of the Ramones. And they said, we were kids and we saw you guys. And we decided to form groups. So they gave him credit.
Yes.
And like you too, Bono.
Right.
He wrote that song, The Miracle of Joey Ramone.
Yeah.
He gives the credit. Eddie Vedder from the Pearl Jam, who became good friends with Johnny later on. We opened up for them. Did a tour with them. Rob Zombie from the White Zombie. All these, they were kids and they saw the Ramones. And decided to form bands. So the Ramones were quite influential. That's the legacy of the Ramones, I think.
They were very influential, like you said. They were DIY before DIY kicked in. A few years later, they were the first DIY, and also they were punk before punk was cool. So that has
when the punk came out, they really didn't like punk. They named punk.
They didn't. Yeah.
It was a problem, because in the early years, people would see the Ramones with the black leather jackets. So one time I'm checking into a hotel somewhere in Cleveland or Columbus. I'm looking behind the desk, a little note, be careful, this is a gang. Be careful of them, What's that's what the problem with the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
That, that they thought we were as crazy as, going to split up or throw up or do stupid things or wreck the hotel rooms or something, do some idiotic thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Any stories or any run-ins with Lou Reed?
The only thing with he was good friends with Danny Fields, the first manager, and he saw the Ramones and really liked them in the beginning, but we didn't really have that much contact personal
Oh,
contact. But he liked the Ramones, and he was very good friends with Danny.
okay, okay. And I think about some of the other bands up there in that end of the country, like Patti Smith, and then the Television, um, and who else?
Talking Heads,
Talking Heads, yes, exactly. David.
B-52s came in later.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, the beautiful part about CBGB's and Hilly
yeah,
Crystal
yeah,
put together there was at the time, the early years, there's late, mid 70s, late 70s. Most clubs you had to play top 40 to,
right, right,
to go into a club. But
right.
Hilly decided, come in, bring your band, as long as you bring people in to drink is okay. And so all these groups were able to develop there. It was like
Yeah,
a breeding ground for all these different bands. And
right,
in the early years, most people in the audiences were other bands.
right.
Those are the audiences, the early years, other bands. So they got very friendly with Blondie and Talking Heads and all those groups.
Exactly. Did they play Max's Kansas City?
Yeah, they played Max's. That was another place that
Okay.
allowed early groups to play their original material. But mostly clubs all around the place didn't. You had to play top 40, so it was really rough.
Yeah,
Eventually, it started, getting better and better. So that's why they were able to start playing out. So different cities had their clubs, like the Rat in Boston, or
yeah,
the
right,
Whiskey and
right,
Roxy. And
right,
well, they started to,
right.
open up to
Doing that. The Rathskeller. Yeah, and like you mentioned, they called the Rat.
the
I've
Rat.
interviewed a couple of musicians from up there talking about that. Yeah, yeah.
I have a lot of fond memories of playing Texas. They were
Oh,
pretty big down there,
yeah,
Austin,
yeah.
San
I was going to
Antonio,
ask you about.
Dallas,
Right,
Houston,
right.
stuff like that. There's this story I tell a million times about, like, in the early years, 77 or 76. We were driving around Texas. It was like a long drive, like 4, 5 hours. We're in the vans. So I had to stop for gas in a convenience station.
Yeah, yeah.
So we pull into the convenience station. They stagger out of the van after a long, and the way they look, Joey, and they
Yeah.
were staggering around looking at the cookies and stuff. So I gassed up, and when they paid the bill, the woman behind the counter says to me, "It's sure nice of you taking care of those retarded boys."
Is that
I
what she
said,
said?
I said, "Yes, ma'am, that's my job."
Is that what she said?
Because they look like coming from Mars. Yeah, after a 5 hours drive, they were staggering. I tell that story too many times.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah.
But that
I
was
mean,
Texas. That was
yeah,
Texas.
yeah, yeah, that, yeah, yeah. Well, I can't make any excuses, But some of the rural areas around here. Yeah, I had talked to a guy. He was from Florida in a band, and they were long hair. It was like early '70s, and they went to record. They couldn't afford to go to L.A. or New York, so they went to Nashville. That was the closest for them, all they could afford. So they went in there and they got the strangest looks. I mean, you can imagine Nashville back then, and these long-haired. He said they were the first long-haired hippies to walk down the street. Yeah, and just the so it's interesting to hear those kind of stories back then. The culture shock too. Yeah, yeah. Well, what's going on these days, Monty?
Well, I'm trying to keep the Ramones legacy going here. So I do a lot of posting on Facebook and Instagram. And I try to do like shows like you,
Okay.
podcasts, stuff like that. Keep that out there. I keep a very part-time job. I work at a theater, Queens Theater in Queens. I do some front of house managing, stuff like that. Just a couple of times a month,
Yeah.
just to keep alive.
Keep alive. Keep the heart beating and yeah.
There's still twice a year. Once Joey's brother Mickey Lee has a Joe Ramone birthday bash here in New York. I try to involve that. And Linda, Johnny's wife, Linda Ramone, has a really great show out in LA at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Have you been out there at Hollywood Forever Cemetery? Have you
No,
been?
no, no, I haven't.
It's a beautiful cemetery. A lot of celebrities there, but they do a lot of events there.
Okay. Okay.
And Johnny has a statue there, and Dee Dee's actually buried out there.
Oh, is he? Okay.
But Linda does a terrific show out there for the Ramones show, Johnny Ramones show, celebrating the Ramones out there. And she's very friendly with a lot of celebrities out there. Like this last year was the anniversary of the Pulp Fiction. So she was very friendly with John Travolta. So he came out and they played the movie, and then they had a couple of people, they had a band playing and stuff like that. But it was quite a big event. It was a very nice event. So twice a year, different Ramones events still happen. Actually, March was the 50th anniversary of them playing the first show 50 years ago
Yeah.
at Performance Studios.
Is that right?
50 years ago, last March.
50. Wow.
And then August, that was that was a three-piece group. The only time they played three-piece, they had a little show there. Then August that year, last year, that's the first time they played CBGBs.
Yeah. Yeah.
They played CBGBs over like 70 times in the Performance Studios. They worked their way up. I mean, they really worked at it. I mean, they were rough and raw in the beginning.
Right.
Very, very, very. I mean, when I first saw them, I was coming from a band. I had 2 albums. My band could sing harmony and play the instruments. When I first saw them, I didn't like them really.
You didn't.
It took them a time to really work and work up. As I said, they played CBGs over 70 times and Performance Studios a number of times, and then they finally went on the road and they developed their whole look and feel and music over. It took them
as
a little
they
bit.
said, all those live shows really honed their craft, as they say. Yeah.
But I'm looking back, I can't believe it's like 50 years.
Right. It goes fast, doesn't it?
Oh, too fast.
It does. Even talking about, do you have any kids?
No, I have a stepdaughter.
Okay. Well, talking about time passing, just look at how fast your kids grow up. I can remember when he was in elementary school. Now he's in college. It's very true what they say, how time flies. Yeah. So
actually, a goddaughter, not a stepdaughter.
Okay.
But yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. Well, anything else, Monty, that you'd like to add and kind of come into a close here that you'd like
I
to?
think we,
okay.
Just pick up the book. It's on Amazon.com. You'll enjoy it, and it's full of pictures and memorabilia and stuff over the years.
Yes. And also go ahead and mention the site. Do you have a website?
Well, so
you can get
Facebook,
it on
Monte A. Melnick on Facebook, and Monte A. Melnick on Instagram.
Okay, and you got your Instagram. Okay. All right then. Well, thank you again, Monty, and it's been very enjoyable. And thank you for sharing. As I like to say, go back in that time machine with me.
And Gabba Gabba Hey to all those Ramones fans.
Oh, there we go.
Gabba Gabba Hey.
Gabba Gabba. We used to do that when I was a teenager. We used to do that all the time. Gabba Gabba Hey. Haven't heard that in a long time.
That's from the movies Freaks. They got that. Story. I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah, sure.
We had a day off in Cleveland, and the movie was playing Freaks, which was quite a movie at the time, which has real freaks in it.
Yes.
So they saw the movie, and there's pinheads in the movie, and also a song, Gooble Gobble, we accept you, we accept you. They saw that, and they decided to write the song Pinhead and write Gobble Gobble, we accept you, one of us. So the Freaks movie inspired Pinhead.
That's where that, okay.
Which was always the last song before the encores, that a Pinhead would come out on stage carrying a sign, Gabba Gabba Hey sign.
Yes, right. That's where that. You're right. Yeah, I remember seeing that too. It's been ages. Wow. All right, that's a good one to take us out.
All right.
All right. Again, appreciate it, Monty, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
And Gabba Gabba Hey, like you said.
Yeah. All right.
And you have a good week upcoming. Okay.
Thank you.
And people, be sure and buy the book.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
All right. All the best to you.
Take care, man.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.